Welcome to FireBall Speedway for today's events. First round is going to be Eddie versus Dan. Dan gets a big jump off the start. Eddie trailing. Dan gets up into the wall, and there will be a stoppage. Eddie now has the lead off of that stoppage because Dan got up into the wall. Eddie running pretty smooth. Dan right up behind him. Dan makes the pass to the inside. Eddie flips wildly into the turn. Let's take a look at that. Just catches a rut and goes for a flip. It will get reset and ready to go. Dan comes around with 5 laps to go in the lead. Strong. They both flip, causing a stoppage. They'll reset. Lights go off and they go back racing. Eddie flips up into turn number 1, gets recovered. No stoppage there. Eddie flips wildly again into turn number 1. Still no stoppage. Dan comes around with 1 lap to go with a lot of room here, and Dan will take it. And he will move on. Eddie will move to the loser's bracket. Next round is Mark versus Brandon. Mark in the green truck. Brandon in the black and white truck. Lights go off, they go racing. Mark takes out Brandon in turn number 1. Brandon flips, trying to recover. Brandon showing his frustration. Let's take a look at that again. Brandon did not have a good week last week, finishing last place. Now just trying to get on the board. Mark is almost a whole lap ahead of Brandon here. Brandon struggling to keep it straight on the track, keeps getting up into the wall. Mark trying to stay smooth so Brandon does not catch up. Mark gets into the wall heavy. Heavy again in turn number 4 with 5 laps to go. Mark still about a half a lap ahead of Brandon. Gets up into the wall. Last lap. Mark spins out into the wall. He goes. Brandon makes the pass in turn number 1. Comes around turn number 4. Mark up into the wall. And Brandon will advance. Mark will go to the loser's bracket. So this is the loser's bracket race. It is Mark versus Eddie. The winner of this will move on and go against Michael. Michael qualified first here today, so he gets a first round bye. Mark with a dirty spin out of Eddie. No stoppage. Eddie gets up into the wall in turn number 2. Mark gets up into the wall in turn number 3. Eddie with the lead. Eddie spins out. Races backwards over the line for the last lap. Mark will get ahead of him and he will take it. Eddie will be eliminated tonight with no points. This is now Brandon versus Dan in the quarterfinals. This is a 20-lap shootout. Brandon gets caught up in Dan in turn number 1. There will be a stoppage. Brandon gets caught up in the wall. Dan with a big lead, almost a half a lap ahead of Brandon. Brandon has been in this situation before. Dan still way out front. Brandon catching up now, coming down the front stretch. Dan gaining a little bit of room now. Dan a little faster on the straight edge. Brandon flips it over in turn number 1 and recovers. Dan caught up in the wall in turn number 4. Dan still with a very good lead, has led every lap of this race. Brandon just trying to stay alive here. Brandon seems to have overheated and he will not finish this race. Dan will win by a DNF of Brandon for overheating. Brandon's been having ESC trouble for the past couple weeks, and it will be his demise tonight. Now it is Michael versus Mark. The winner of this moves on to the finals. Michael spins out in turn number 3. Mark with a huge lead over Michael now. This track is small, so one little mistake costs you an entire lap. Michael up into the wall, there would be a stoppage. Michael's caught up to Mark right on his bumper. This is a tight race. One mistake by Mark could cost him the lead here. Mark flips into turn number 1.
How many laps to go?
Oh, and Mark appears to be broken. His rear wheel has come off. Michael slipper clutch actually gave out at the same time during that accident, so there was a stoppage. They were both able to be repaired, and the race will continue. Mark spins out Michael right across the finish line. They get together. Mark now with over a half a lap lead. This could be the end. Michael flips over into turn number 4. The lights did come on, but there will not be a stoppage as he landed back on 4 wheels. Michael way up into the fence. Let's take a look at that. Flips upside down, and there will be a stoppage. And he fixes it. Doesn't get off the track in time before the lights shut off. Last lap. Michael needs a lot of room to recover, and Mark will take it. Michael is now eliminated from the night. The finals. The winner takes it all. Dan versus Mark. Mark in the green truck, Dan in the blue truck. He's been strong all night, as Dan has too. Dan will get up into turn number 4. They get into it. They're bumping all race long. Dan with a big lead here. Dan spins out into turn number 4, gets up into the fence, and there will be a stoppage. Lights go off, the race continues. Mark now with over a half a lap lead. Dan flips into turn number 3. There will not be a stoppage. It looks like he wasn't going to recover, but now Mark will lap Dan down. Dan is now 1 lap down. This is a lot for this track as Dan flips into turn number 3, and there will be a stoppage. The lights will go out, and the race will continue. Mark is almost a lap and a half ahead of Dan now. That's a lot of room to recover as Dan flips again down the backstretch. Mark come around, gonna lap him down again. Dan really needs Mark to mess up here. Mark goes into the center of the racetrack. Dan needs Mark to mess up and spin out. He might be able to make up a lap or 2. Dan gets hard into the wall, gets his truck spun around. That was wild. Mark's still a lap and a half ahead of Dan. Dan needs a huge break. Dan, 3 straight laps having trouble trying to keep the truck straight. Mark is now 2 laps ahead of Dan after the reset. Dan gets that lap back and flips, and he goes 2 laps down again. Dan making up no ground, still 2 laps down. Mark has a very, very comfortable lead. As long as Mark doesn't mess up, he should be all right. And they get up into the fence together for a stoppage, and we will start again. Dan can't keep it out of the wall. Mark, with 1 lap to go, gets spun out, but has plenty of insurance, and Mark will take home tonight's championship. After tonight's races, Mark will finish in first place with 9 points in the standings, Eddie with 6, Dan with 4, Michael with 2, and Brandon with 1. We'll see you next week at Rocky Memorial Raceway.